How do I get this thing up on this one?
You can.
Anyone join?
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. We'll just wait for a few more minutes to see if there are any more attendees.
And that's one.
A couple more. Right, shall we begin?
Sure, okay.
Yeah. So, welcome to our pre-application consultation for Oronsay East Seaweed Farm. These are slightly unusual circumstances, and we're very grateful to Marine Scotland for allowing us to hold this online. It is our first time hosting a Zoom webinar, so apologies if there are any problems with technology, but fingers crossed it will all go smoothly. So the schedule for this evening, firstly, we'll do a bit of a welcome, introduce ourselves, give a bit about our background and how GreenSea Solutions came about. We'll then go through the farm site, its location, structure, harvesting, processing. We'll then go through our considerations from the general policies of Scotland's National Marine Plan. And we'll finish with a Q&A. Thank you, some of you, for sending in questions. I believe on your Zoom screen there is an option to send in questions during the presentation, so please do so. And if we have time at the end, we will answer as many as possible. So firstly, this is us. My name is Annabelle Scott. I worked in publishing for 4 years in London and then joined an environmental think tank focusing on sustainability policy and advising the government on environmental issues.
I'm Douglas Hamilton. At the time of our founding GreenSea Solutions, I was actually a project officer at the Prince's Countryside Fund, running a program to make farms and other rural businesses more resilient to change. And that's me, yeah.
So in terms of GreenSea Solutions, it was founded by us in December 2018, primarily to explore the environmental benefits that seaweed has to offer. And we've spent the last year really working alongside various research organisations, including Scotland's Rural College, SRUC, looking at the possibility of developing agricultural products that could provide sustainable alternatives and in particular lower greenhouse gas emissions. Last year we spent some time on the east coast of America observing the success of their sustainable seaweed farming industry, and we are now hoping to establish our own farm in Loch Sunart, and we hope that this consultation will provide you with a comprehensive overview of our plans for the farm, and we look forward to answering your questions at the end. So on to the farm site, a bit of information. So firstly, location-wise, you can see on this map, so we have a lease option agreement from Crown Estate Scotland for the site outlined in red, and this sits just above the eastern tip of Oronsay Island in Loch Sunart. And coordinates for this area are listed on the top right-hand corner of the screen. Within this area, we intend to deploy grid-based mooring systems, quite similar to mussel farm structures, And we will begin with one trial grid in year 1, with the potential to install further grids, which will still be within the confines outlined in years 2 and 3. So this is a shot of the farm site, or where it will sit, and you can see Oronsay Island in the middle there. The site isn't actually visible from the B8007 on the north shore of Loch Sunart, as the road is too low. This picture is taken from the top of Carna, looking due west towards Mull and Ardnamurchan. And you can just see the 2 yellow navigation marks are shown in their approximate positions, and the visual impact of the anchor buoys is also shown, and they're represented by the 6 dark grey dots. So that gives you an idea of what the farm site will look like when it is in place. So the design and deployment of the farm structure will be undertaken by Aquamore. Aquamore have been involved in seaweed aquaculture since 2012, and their team have over 60 years combined experience of designing, installing and maintaining mooring systems and aquaculture structures. The proposed farm infrastructure design has a short scope mooring system for minimum benthic impact and smallest possible seabed footprint. This will be achieved with direct embedment anchors and synthetic fibre mooring components. The materials used will create an environmentally friendly, high-strength, long-life mooring system and seaweed cultivation structure. So onto the seaweed itself. We intend to grow 3 common kelp species already native to Loch Sunart, and these are Laminaria digitata, Saccharina latacema, and Alaria esculenta. And the grid will be seeded using fertile kelp material collected close to the farm site and cultivated in a secure hatchery unit. And this will lower biosecurity risk and avoid the introduction of invasive non-native species. The seaweed we grow has several potential uses. In year 1, where we will only grow a small amount on our trial grid, and as part of the UK-wide consortium, the vast majority of our first yield will be provided to a combination of UK universities and research organisations exploring the potential for seaweed as a sustainable packaging material and agricultural feed. We are in discussions with companies interested in seaweed for food and natural skincare, and will also explore these opportunities for later yields. So harvest and processing. These 2 images give an idea of what the seaweed lines will look like at the end of their growth period. The one on the left is taken from a seaweed farm in Maine, and the one on the right, a farm in Ireland. And in terms of the boat that we will be using to collect in the system, it will be very similar to the one on the right. It will be a simple winch system that will lift the lines out of the water, and then we will cut off the seaweed by hand and transport it back to shore. So, as I said, harvest will be carried out manually using a small workboat, and we expect harvest up to half a tonne of seaweed each day over a 2 to 4 week period. So this period is very weather dependent, and we will only be able to go out on the boat when it is safe to do so. So we want to allow for enough time for the full harvest to take place. There will be at least 2 people working on the boat at any one time, with 2 more working on processing the seaweed when it has been brought back to land. Processing will occur in an existing waterfront shed close to the site at Glenmore Bay, so it's just north of the site, and will be transported onward by road. No chemicals will be used during this process. The seaweed is simply dried using a warm air unit, and once stabilised can be vacuum packed whole or ground down into flakes using a simple grinding mechanism. So in terms of the timeline for how we foresee the farm, between now and September, we will finish the licence application process, and all things being equal, we will be able to deploy the trial grid in October of this year. The seaweed growth period will then take place between October and March of next year, at which point the harvest will take place, and this, as I said, could be up to 4 weeks in March and April. Between May and September of next year, we will then assess the success of the first trial grid We will remove the lines from the water and clean them, hopefully in preparation for winter deployment next year. And in October, we may also deploy a second grid, but this is dependent on the success of the first year. So I'm now going to go through some of our considerations in relation to Scotland's National Marine Plan. If you want to look at the general policies in detail, you can find them online at the ScotGov website if you look up Scotland's National Marine Plan. We've tried to sort of cut them down a little bit because they are quite lengthy, and sort of combine the ones that are relevant. So firstly, general policies 1 to 4, and these relate to sustainable development, economic and social benefits, and coexistence with other activities. So primarily, we believe that seaweed farming is an exciting opportunity for a sustainable new food production system that provides an alternative to obtaining seaweed through dredging, which can be very harmful to the marine environment. We feel that a new industry of this kind will contribute to the economy both locally and nationally if developed properly. This area in particular is very reliant on seasonal income during holiday periods, particularly in the summer months. A seaweed farm in this area will provide alternative employment outside of these peak periods during the seeding of the lines in October and harvest in March and April. Historically, seaweed farming was a thriving industry in Scotland and was part of the fabric of crofting when used as a fertiliser. And we feel that rejuvenating this industry could provide a sense of natural and historical well-being, both for the locals and for visitors to the area. We have already spoken to some local stakeholders and believe that the farm will not impinge on other activities in the area, both aquaculture and leisure-based. So general policies 5 to 8, and these relate to climate change, historic heritage, visual impact, and coastal impact. So in terms of climate change, seaweed farming has very low carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. There may even be some carbon naturally sequestered from each crop. No artificial chemicals or nutrients will be required during the growth period of the crop. In terms of historic heritage, the farm site sits well outside the boundary of the historic marine protected area at Ningaree. There will be no interaction with or marine activity close to this area. In terms of visual impact, the grid structure will be very low profile, sitting approximately 2 meters below the surface and barely visible to the naked eye. As you saw in the photograph earlier, the only visible aspects will be marker buoys designating the outer limits of the structure, which are required to comply with the Northern Lighthouse Board's safety regulations. And we can foresee no impact on coastal process or flooding. There is even some evidence that seaweed farms may provide protection against coastal erosion. General policies 9 and 10. Firstly, general policy 9 refers to natural heritage. So we will work closely with Nature Scotland to ensure that we comply with all legislation set out to protect species within the Sunart Special Area of Conservation. And these include, but are not limited to, seals and nesting birds. We will also ensure that the farm structure does not conflict with any features of the Loch Sunart Marine Protected Area. We will use eco-anchors that require shorter, lighter chains, which cause far less damage to the seabed during movement compared to conventional mooring systems. Seaweed has been shown to absorb waste from both terrestrial activity and other forms of aquaculture, which may also be beneficial for the surrounding water quality and other species in Loch Sunart. General policy number 10, relating to invasive non-native species. A strict biosecurity plan will be followed by employees and marine vessels working on the farm site. Fertile material for seeding will be collected from native seaweed populations found on rocky foreshores and harbours close to the farm site, and these will be developed at a secure hatchery unit. General policies 11 to 14. These relate to marine litter and water, noise and air quality. Any waste generated by the farm site will be disposed of on land through commercially approved waste disposal services. Seaweed does not require fresh water or produce water waste during cultivation, so there should be no impact on water quality. And we can foresee no noise pollution from the farm site and no negative impact on air quality. And finally, general policies 15 to 21. And these relate to planning alignments, fairness, management, engagement, and sound evidence. We will work positively and openly alongside other planning, regulation, and management that affects the use of the marine area. We agree wholeheartedly with the spirit of fairness and the importance of developing a sustainable industry that will prove beneficial socially and economically for generations to come. We will continue to engage with local stakeholders and members of the community throughout the project. And in terms of sound evidence, we have sought scientific and socio-economic advice from experienced individuals and respected marine bodies, including SAMS and Aquamore. We are a member of the Scottish Seaweed Industry Association and are part of a consortium of UK businesses, including other seaweed farmers, animal feed developers, and scientific research organisations looking to explore the environmental benefits of seaweed. We will continue to seek advice regarding all aspects of the project. Thank you. So we are now going to move on to the Q&A element.
We got some excellent questions, and so we'll go through them in as much detail as possible, but without boring you all senseless. And we'll start with the site itself. You turn another. More. Thank you. Lovely. Right, we'll start with one question we received amongst a few from one particular participant. Will any further grids be contained within the 15-hectare site shown on the map? There is capacity to install several grids, possibly up to half a dozen quite small grids in the 15-hectare site on the map. But it's very unlikely that we'll be able to use the entire site for various topographical reasons. It's important that we farm responsibly and sustainably, which means not farming too intensively. We'll learn what the carrying capacity of the East Orkney site is once we have some experience operating in it. The next question is, might we want to expand the site in the future? It would be a shame if the bay between Carna and Oronsay ended up resembling Loch Spelv. No, it's not going to end up resembling Loch Spelv, hopefully. If we can achieve successful results at the site and can support local employment, then we might look to expand our operations in and around Loch Sunart, but not in the very same location at all. So the site impact of farming. How much seaweed may be harvested each year from a grid? The harvest yield could be up to 5 tons of wet seaweed per grid, and depending on the species grown at the site. A ton is equivalent to 40 sacks of potatoes, but remember, once dried, it is 90% less heavy and less volume. How and where would you take it ashore? Would you need a new lochside infrastructure, a jetty, slipway, or anything of that kind? Absolutely not. Everything that's going to be harvested by small fishing boat will be landed just across the loch at Glenmore Bay, and we plan to use the existing slipway in Glenmore Bay. Would you need to leave seaweed out to dry? And if so, where? Would it smell? No, seaweed would be left to dry outside and inside, but there won't be any smell, as it will be fresh when landed and would be processed as soon as possible, if not immediately. So which brings us on to processing. What does it entail? Primary processing of seaweeds entail drying a seaweed to reduce the moisture content from 90% down to 10%. This drying process stabilizes the seaweed material, allowing it to be milled down into flakes or vacuum packed as whole fronds for onward transport. Someone has asked whether there's been any planning applications put in for a processing plant. The answer is we're not going to. We plan to utilize an existing building in Glenmore Bay. And it's likely that only a change of use would be our only application for planning consent. What is the end product of processing, and what forms might it take? Would it take a liquid, powder, bales, or whatever? Good question. The end product of processing is mostly dried common flakes and powder. This is around 10% of the harvest weight and less than 10% of the harvest volume. So a 1 ton harvest of seaweed would yield 100 kilograms of dry material, which in reality would probably fill about 4 or 5 bags or boxes, not anything particularly significant, and nothing that will require anything larger than a Ford Transit van, if not smaller. Yes, would the end product be moved by road or on the sea? Most likely, it'll almost all be taken out by road. We might transport some fresh materials to Oban directly by boat for research purposes. And that would be about it. Here with these?
Yeah.
And a couple of more environmental concerned questions. Here we are. Is there any risk to marine animal entanglement in a seaweed farm? The answer essentially is no. The moorings in the seaweed farm are under constant tension, so it's not possible for large marine animals to get entangled. Entanglement is not a recognized issue on these sorts of aquaculture installations, such as finfish or mussel farms, for the same reason. It's more of an issue associated with static fishing gear and nets that are lost overboard by fishing boats, etc., etc. And you can find out more on scotishentanglement.org, which is a website dedicated to the issue. Does growing seaweed have any impact on light reaching the seabed? Of course, if this was the case, it would be somewhat problematic for the ecosystems that lay on the bed, but we don't think it is. It's known as bathic shading, and it's not a significant issue for the scale at which we propose to farm, nor in the depths of 10 meters of water or more. A lot of academic work has been done to investigate this in Southeast Asia, where it's much more of a problem, as it's cultivated in much more intensive conditions and in 1.5 to 2 meters depth, completely different type of environment for farming seaweed. And finally, does seaweed generate debris if the fronds fall off, and is this a problem? As the seaweed cultivated on the farm is harvested each year, there are no old plants left on the farm. And at the scale of farming we are proposing, this is not a meaningful, significant issue anyway. The standing biomass of native wild seaweeds in Loch Sunart would be hundreds of thousands of times, if not more, what we are cultivating on the farm. And the shedding of old material is a natural phenomenon in the wild. Finally, our roats themselves won't be in the water all year round. They will be in the water from around October, November until April, and at the very latest May, which means that for half the year, we don't have any significant materials in the water whatsoever, other than the pre-existing mooring systems which we plan on putting in.
And this is particularly relevant during the busier summer period, where there will be more recreational boats. And I noticed we have a question regarding that. We have spoken to the Northern Lighthouse Board, and we will ensure that the visibility is correct in terms of marker buoys. We've also ensured that the location of the site allows for passage from recreational boats between Carna and Oronsay, and there is enough space for that, we have been assured. But yes, we absolutely want to work with the RYA and the NLB to make sure that there aren't any conflicts in that area. So thank you for your question. I don't know if anyone has any other questions, but please do fire away if you do. You should. There is a Q&A option on
the top of your screen, and it'll drop down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Simon. Hi, Simon. We're about to unmute you.
We're trying to unmute you, Simon. Sorry. I don't know if it might be muted on your computer.
Oh. We can hear something, Simon.
Right, you've got me now, have you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God, that awful photograph. Oh dear. Anyway, I like the sound of your project. Just to let everybody else know who's online, I'm chair of the West Coast Regional Inshore Fisheries Group, and obviously MPAs and PMFs are very close to to our heart just now.
Yeah.
What would be your projected tonnage per week in, say, year 4 or 5?
Year 4 or 5, hopefully we would have maybe 6 grids, each producing 5 tonnes. So potentially up to 30 tonnes we could be collecting. That would be in one harvest. They'll also, as I mentioned before, the possibility that we will have maybe only 2 grids at the East Oronsay site, and we will look at other locations in and around Loch Sunart or even further out, so as not to tread on anyone's toes. But yeah, in year 4 or 5, we might be harvesting per day up to 5 tonnes, 10 tonnes.
Right, that's, so I mean, so it's not going to be going out in lorry loads as such.
There's a chance that when we get to that level of yield, we will actually move our processing facility to somewhere like Oban, which can more readily handle that, so that we're not sort of blocking the peninsula.
Yeah, I was just thinking in the case of I know that road very well. I used to live in Glenelg, and I had a smokehouse there and delivered to Glenborgle Castle on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I know that road and its problems, in particular with the large vehicles. I'm surprised to say that the growth of the seaweed is in the winter months. My experience on moorings on my yacht was in the summer months. The mooring lines do tend to get a lot of kelp growth on. Is summer weather, warmer water and brighter light, does that not make a significant difference?
The seaweed that we want to harvest at that particular stage has grown to its best sort of quality by April, May. It does continue to grow and it releases spores during the summer, and that's probably the thing that's clinging onto your boats and all of that. But the quality then decreases. So you
also suffer from crustaceans.
Yeah,
crustaceans become a huge problem for the ropes and the seaweed in the summer months. People experiment on the east coast of the States with this, but they find that they find their lines on the seabed weighted down by everything else that's going on.
So we really are sort of constrained by the seasons, and that we will want to get the harvest done by the spring, really. And it does grow well in the cooler waters, the kelp species that we're growing.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just, I mean, my other concern is obviously that you have answered that. It's regarding the voyage around the area. It's if the scallop boats eventually start fishing in Loch Sunart again, it's just so that they don't don't cross the line and create a problem. That's fine. Your markets, I'm curious where your markets are.
So, as we mentioned, in the first year, we are sort of relying on the research market. There is a lot of research going into seaweed, especially for sort of biodegradable packaging, and also for agricultural feed, lowering methane emissions and that kind of thing. Beyond that, we are actually speaking to a couple of sort of cosmetic companies, natural sort of food health, nutrition, places like Holland and Barrett use seaweed a lot in their products. So it's likely that we'll then, once we have higher yields, start to move into those markets. But yeah, certainly for the first year or two, it will be research and development, and that will be sort of agriculture and environmentally focused.
Yes, and then you'll be going on to added value, I take it, from them. Yeah. And
the dream is that we will be able to create human food and potentially transport fresh seaweed to restaurants and that kind of thing. But there are a whole lot of problems in terms of licensing for that, and the quality of the seaweed has to be perfect. So that's something we'll start looking into once we start growing and we've got a better idea of how it works.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your questions.
I wish you well.
Thank you, Simon.
I will come and visit you someday.
Thank you. Right.
Are there any other questions?
Does anyone else?
There's a notification on the Q&A slip there.
I think that's one.
Is anyone still here?
If anyone has any other questions.
If anyone has any final questions, let us know and we'll unmute you as well.
What I was also going to say is that we are going to keep questions open for the next 2 weeks, I think until the 12th of May. So if you do have any further questions, please email either of us, and we will include those in our consultation report, and we are happy to discuss any queries or concerns with you. We can arrange phone calls and that kind of thing.
That's right.
And we will be hoping to submit our license application at the end of May. So all being equal, we will, fingers crossed, receive the license around beginning of September. The license application will be available online, and we are happy to, again, discuss that with anyone. I think it's very important to us that we're not treading on anyone's toes. We believe that this is a really exciting new industry, but in order for it to work, it needs to fit symbiotically into what already exists. So,
I couldn't put it better myself.
Yeah, so that's
right.
really what.
Well, if no one has any further questions, thank you very much for joining.
And also, I'm just meant to say this presentation will be available online on our Facebook page and our website. So if you would like to watch it again for some reason, please do. But I think if no one has any other questions, we will say
good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. And yes, please get in touch if you've got any questions, and come visit us when we are up and running.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.